Ever wonder if, if there's any actual science behind telepathy?
Hmm.
I mean, it's usually lumped in with, all the paranormal stuff, but
Right.
we're doing a deep dive today on, the biology of it. We're
Right.
looking at some really interesting research by Dr. Srini Pillay.
Okay.
He's a psychiatrist, and he was featured in Psychology Today.
Interesting.
Yeah. So get ready to learn about stuff like mirror neurons and
Right.
experiments on, brain-to-brain communication across, huge distances.
Wow.
And even what role dopamine might play in people
Yeah.
believing in ESP.
It is fascinating how science is really starting to look into all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It used to be considered totally supernatural.
Right.
Yeah, Dr. Pillay points to a bunch of studies that actually suggest that telepathy might not just be a fantasy.
So one of the things he talks about is mirror neurons.
Hmm.
And these are brain cells that fire not only when we do something, but also when we watch someone else do the same thing.
Oh, wow.
It's like our brains are mirroring what's happening in the other person's mind.
Yeah.
And there's even been research showing that oxytocin,
Okay.
sometimes called the trust hormone,
Right.
can increase this mirroring effect.
That's right. And if we think about it in the bigger picture, mirror neurons are super important to how we interact socially and how we experience empathy. They help us understand what other people are feeling, what they might be thinking.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So could this be like a primal form of telepathy?
Mm-hmm.
A way that we connect and understand each other, on a deeper level?
Wow.
Have you ever thought about a time when you just knew what someone was going to say or do?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Maybe mirror neurons were at work.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about, communication?
Yeah.
That happens over, long distances.
Hmm.
Dr. Pillay mentions a study from 2014 where researchers were able to transmit words like hola and ciao
Wow.
across continents
Really?
using only the participants' brains and the internet.
That's amazing.
That sounds pretty sci-fi to me.
Yeah, it's definitely groundbreaking. What's really interesting is it makes you ask yourself, is this a rudimentary form of technological telepathy?
Yeah.
We're talking about transmitting thoughts over huge distances. Using technology,
Right.
imagine the possibilities for communication or even medical applications.
I'm really curious about this email experiment that Dr. Pillay describes.
Oh, yeah.
From 2005.
Okay.
Participants had to guess who was about to send them an email.
Okay.
And they were right way more often than chance would allow.
Hmm.
They had some sort of invisible connection with the sender.
This is where the whole idea of statistical significance is really important.
Okay.
While Sheldrake's findings are super interesting, we do need more research and more experiments to be sure about the results. Before we can say for sure it's evidence of telepathy,
Yeah.
we got to be careful not to jump to conclusions, just because the results seem really cool.
Right. Then there's the 2008 study Dr. Pillay mentions with a mentalist. Researchers showed him images, and he was able to reproduce them almost perfectly just using his mind.
Wow.
And while he was doing this, brain imaging showed specific activity in his parahippocampal gyrus.
Okay, so the parahippocampal gyrus plays a role in memory and spatial awareness.
Mm-hmm.
This research suggests that there could be a neurological basis for what we think of as telepathic abilities. It's we're seeing hints of a hidden potential in the brain, even if we don't fully understand how it works yet.
Right.
But this is still a pretty new area of research, and we need more studies to confirm these initial findings.
Okay, so think about how flocks of birds change direction all at the same time, or how schools of fish move together perfectly in unison.
Yeah.
Could this be a form of animal telepathy?
It's easy to think that, right?
Yeah.
But there are probably some more straightforward explanations at work here, like complex algorithms and natural processes, rather than supernatural forces.
Okay.
We see these kinds of patterns in ant colonies or in the movements of bacteria. These are what we call emergent behaviors. They're driven by simple rules and interactions. But they result in really complex, seemingly coordinated group behavior.
So we shouldn't just assume it's telepathy, because it looks like it.
Exactly.
There could be other things going on.
It's a great example of how nature can sometimes seem much more mysterious than it really is.
Right.
We tend to look for these complex explanations when there might be simpler, more elegant solutions based in biology and physics.
Speaking of simpler explanations, Dr. Pillay brings up some research that links higher dopamine levels with a tendency to believe in things like ESP,
Oh, interesting.
So does this mean people who believe in telepathy just have more dopamine in their systems?
Well, it's super important not to misinterpret these findings.
Okay.
The research isn't saying that telepathy doesn't exist, but it does raise some interesting questions about how our brain chemistry might affect our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that the amount of dopamine we have could play a role in how open we are to certain ideas, including ones that might seem unfounded to other people.
Okay, so it's not about debunking telepathy, but more about understanding how our brains work
Right.
and how that might affect what we believe.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So after going through all this research, what conclusions does Dr. Pillay actually draw about telepathy?
Well, based on all these studies, he puts forward some pretty intriguing hypotheses.
Okay.
For example, he suggests that everyone might have some telepathic potential, even if it's hidden or underdeveloped.
Interesting.
He points to the fact that our brains are naturally wired to pick up on subtle social cues and mirror the emotions of other people.
Okay.
He even speculates that we might be able to tap into a deeper connection if we could tune into a specific frequency.
Wow.
Kind of like how the internet lets us communicate.
Wait, are you saying we could all be like Professor X from X-Men,
Yeah.
reading each other's minds?
Well, maybe not that dramatic.
Okay.
But Dr. Pillay does encourage us to explore these possibilities in our own lives. He suggests some simple experiments to try with friends, like testing your intuition about their feelings or trying that email guessing game we talked about. See if you can predict who's sending you a message. He even suggests paying closer attention to animals to see if you can spot any signs of what might seem like telepathic communication between them.
That's a really interesting idea. It's like he's challenging us to tap into a hidden potential that we don't even know we have.
Yeah.
But he's not talking about setting up rigorous scientific experiments. Or
No, not at all.
Okay.
Dr. Pillay frames it more as a fun personal exploration, a way to engage with these ideas in a playful and curious way.
Right.
It's about being open to the possibility that there's more to human connection and communication than we currently understand.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from mirror neurons and brain-to-brain communication to the role of dopamine in belief systems.
Right.
It's clear that the science of telepathy is complex and still in its early stages.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should remember?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is that what was once considered purely paranormal is now being investigated scientifically.
Right.
We're starting to see hints that there might be real foundations for phenomena like telepathy, even if we're a long way from fully understanding them. Another key takeaway is that we need to approach these topics with an open mind, but also with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
We should be willing to explore new possibilities, but also be critical of the evidence and not jump to conclusions too quickly.
You've mentioned a few times that more research is needed. What are some of the unanswered questions that scientists are still working on when it comes to telepathy?
Well, one of the biggest questions is, if telepathy exists, does it operate through a specific mechanism, or is it a combination of things? For example, is it just in the brain? Or could it involve other systems in the body, or even external factors? Another question is how telepathy, if it's real, might differ from other forms of communication, both verbal and nonverbal.
Right.
And we also need to understand the role of individual differences. Why do some people seem to be more sensitive to these kinds of things than others?
So there's still a lot we don't know, but that's part of what makes this topic so fascinating, right?
Totally.
It makes us question our understanding of the world and what's even possible.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we often think of telepathy as like a superpower, but maybe it's actually something much more subtle than that. Maybe it's something we experience in little ways all the time, like when we just have a feeling that we know what someone's going to say, or when we feel a connection with another person that we can't really explain.
I think you've hit on something important there.
Yeah.
If we think about telepathy not as literal mind reading, but as a deeper level of intuition and empathy, it becomes a lot more relatable. We've all had those times when we felt like we understood someone
Yeah.
on a level beyond words, like we just clicked with them. Maybe those moments are glimpses of a telepathic connection, even if it's a really faint one.
Wow, that really makes you think. Makes you wonder if we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Yeah.
What if, as we evolve and learn more about the brain, we unlock even greater levels of connection and communication? The implications for human relationships understanding. Even conflict resolution could be huge.
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea, and I think that's what makes exploring the science of telepathy so intriguing.
Right.
It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about the world and the limits of what humans can do.
This deep dive has really taken us on a journey, from exploring mirror neurons to the possibility of long-distance brain communication, from the mysteries of the parahippocampal gyrus to the role of dopamine in belief.
It's been quite the ride.
We've covered a lot of fascinating ground, but it's been more than just facts. It's sparked a new way of thinking about the world and our place in it.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about like consciousness and connection and what it means to be human.
And that's what we always hope for with these deep dives, right? Spark your curiosity, get you questioning, exploring, and staying open to all the mysteries out there.
Absolutely.
So to our listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into the biology of telepathy, we want to leave you with one final thought. If telepathy is a real phenomenon, even if it's subtle, and we don't totally get it yet, what does that mean for how we connect with each other? How we communicate what it means to be conscious?
Yeah,
It's definitely something to think about.
it really is.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions. Who knows, you might just unlock some hidden telepathic potential in yourself.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the biology of telepathy.
It's been a pleasure.